everyone, I'm Rita Peterson with Everything Homemade, and we are going to go into detail on everything you need to know from start to finish with butchering your roosters. So what we're going to do is we are going to go first, how do you identify rooster from hen, because that's highly important in your flock. Once you've established that, we'll show you how we separate them when we butcher in the evening. Then we're going to go from there. We're going to go from how we do the initial kill on the rooster all the way to skinning them, all the way to gutting them, and then soaking in water and everything in between. So this is a comprehensive video. It's going to be a bit lengthy, but I like to make our videos very in-depth so you're equipped to do it yourself. So what we're going to do is rooster identification, and there is about 4 things you can look for in young roosters. So one is the obvious cock-a-doodle-doo. If you can hear it and you actually can see a rooster do that, that is great. But when you got, when you're dealing with a huge flock, some of the roosters don't say anything because they let the more dominant rooster do the cockle-doodle-doo. So that's not always a given. And all roosters may not show all these 4 things because of different breeds. Some breeds have bigger combs, some breeds have no combs as a rooster. So look for the clues, okay? So the first one is a cockle-doodle-doo. The next one is comb size. Some roosters have huge combs and huge wattles at the bottom. These here, right here. Some have huge combs. Now this one has a small one. He's going to be our show here. So some have big, and I'm going to show you a rooster with a huge comb. His face right here, if you didn't look at any of his feathers, his face looks like a hen, okay? But he's actually a rooster. Now, how do we know that? So let's take a look a little closer at feathers. So if you take a look at these here. These are called saddleback feathers, right here. Okay, you see how they lay down? All roosters will have this. They'll have their feathers nicely here, but they'll have this characteristic saddleback of these loose falling down feathers. The other thing is their tail. They will have one longer tail feather on average. Now some roosters don't, but this one has a very little one, and I'm going to show you this because this one's a tricky one to identify as a rooster because he only has a very small tail feather. A lot of times roosters will have 2 long tail feathers that will actually crisscross, and I'm going to show you that on a few. So I'm going to show you a few because we have about 12 breeds mixed together. So our roosters come in so many different shapes and sizes, but these are the characteristics we're looking for. I'm going to put him onto the side that we are going to segregate, and then we are going to start catching some other roosters. We're going to go through what other roosters look like, okay, with different kind of breeds, so you get a broad perspective on how to identify roosters. Okay, you guys, so we are in our chicken house. Now our chicken house can be separated into 2 sections. So we have all our chickens on this side, and we have a board right here that we can take off and on. Normally we have this coop opened right up, but right now when we're butchering, we actually put all the males or roosters onto this side. So during the day they have this run. Now they are given water right here, but we do not give them food for the day because we don't want their crops full of food. They can scratch around. I'm sure there's little seeds here. They're not going to starve, but you always feed them water. So what we're going to do is go to the other side. We're going to catch, look at who's a roo, who is a hen, and I'll show you how to do that quickly again with all the different breeds. And we're going to open up this door and put all the roos on this side. And when I say roos, that means roosters. Okay, my team, are you ready?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to catch a rooster one by one to demonstrate, to show everyone the different comb sizes and everything. So let's go. When you go in, make sure that we are not moving quickly. One reason is so we don't create a just chaos with all these birds. So let's go in.
Okay.
Okay, so as you can see, we have the light on in the house right now, but we got guineas, we have hens, we've got all this stuff. So let's stop moving around so I can get some good footage here. So take a look at this guy, you guys. This guy is a roo. You see the saddleback feathers. The comb is slight, but he has big saddleback feathers, and he has hardly any tail feathers, but he is definitely a roo. Is there a big rooster?
There's a huge one right here, right?
Okay.
Walking away.
Okay, let's stop.
Huge comb.
Okay, so here's also a roo. This guy right here. Look at the size of his comb. One huge identification mark. Again, he has that one tail feather right there poking up, and he has a saddleback, and they're a little bit harder to tell because they are black, and he's mostly black, but he's another big roo.
Here's one with a little comb, but much tail feathers right here. There's one with another.
There you go. Thank you guys. So there's another roo. You see the back tail feathers? Those are huge on him, right there. Okay, so right there is his tail feathers. He's got a half decent comb, so I would say a medium-sized comb, and he has the typical saddleback. So he's another roo. Okay, what else can we go here?
There's a roo right in the corner there.
Yeah,
That's a pretty big comb.
they're kind of squishing away, going, oh my goodness, what are they doing? That's a roo in the back there. He has a pretty big comb. Again, not massive back tail feathers, but he has the saddleback there. So let's take a look at a hen for a moment, see if we got a good identity. There's a good hen. You notice that she doesn't have much comb, and you notice no saddleback feathers, and the back tail feathers are just straight up. So that is definitely a hen. Let's see, we got some more examples of hens here. That one up there, she's a hen. This one, where are we here? This one right here, she's a beautiful hen.
This one is
Okay. Yeah. So she's a hen. You notice no point where the saddleback feathers would be, alright? There's no saddleback feathers. There's nothing going down. It's just, okay? All these here are hens. Alright, so take a look at this guy. He has what we call a massive comb. So that is a dead giveaway. He is a rooster. The other thing, Ocean, can you, I know he's a bit feisty, this guy. Can we see his tail feathers? I don't want him to get pecked. So you guys watch your faces when you're dealing with birds. Okay, he has a huge plume here. He's got a bit of a loose tail feather here. That's another giveaway. Plus, take a look at those saddleback feathers right here. Okay, you can see them drooping. So he's a nice big rooster. Okay, so here's another rooster. This is a white one. Remember, I've got all different breeds. Come on, get a focus. He has a very interesting comb, this particular breed. He's got a small wattle, a smaller comb, but look at those feathers. This is your giveaway right here. He's got drooping feathers. He has a slight saddleback, and it's a bit harder to tell because he's white, but he's definitely a roo. Let's look at this white roo right here that Ocean's got again. This roo has a bit of a smaller comb, but again, typical drooping these back feathers. And I don't know if we can see a saddleback as great here because of how you're holding, but again, he has one of those characteristics of big back feathers. Okay, so now that we caught the roos, these hens are ready to go, and we got a mixture of very young hens, we got a mixture of older hens, and so we are also going to take a quarter of our flock. So the 2-year-old hens are going to go, but we're not going to deal with butchering hens this round. We are now going to feed these guys, and then we're going to let them out so they can run around for the rest of the day. Okay, so let's just an overview here, just so you get one more look. These are all our roos in our flock. Look at the different shapes and sizes, comb sizes of them. Okay, so they're gonna hang out here. When my husband comes home at around 3 o'clock, we are going to start butchering right after supper. Hey everyone, we are getting ready for butchering. Now, getting ready is very, very important to have everything ready before you start. So, we have all the roosters separated. Step number 1. Step number 2, you need to make sure that you have where you're gonna butcher ready, and I'll show you what we do. So we're gonna start over here. So we do our roosters on a gallows style, and I'll show you how to do this. The kill is quick. Basically, my husband will cut the jugular of the throat and then hold the bird so it doesn't flap everywhere and get stressed. Let the bird calm down, die peacefully, and drain the blood. So Orion and my husband will be at this station tonight. Right beside this station, we have a Rubbermaid. This Rubbermaid is half full of clean water. This Rubbermaid, so basically after my husband and my son skin the bird gets dropped here. So that way it always stays cool, cools down, stays wet, and the meat doesn't dry up while we are gutting. Just in case we can't keep up, the birds are soaking nicely in water for us. So that's what the first Rubbermaid here is for. Coming over here, we have 3 Rubbermaids. Now, 5 to 6 big roosters can fit in each Rubbermaid. We have, between 15 and 18 roosters to do, so we need 3 Rubbermaids. To do, Orion is filling them up with clean water, and this is where the finished gutted roosters will be soaking in here in water, and I'm going to go over that in detail once we do it, because I'll explain why we're soaking in water. But basically you need enough tubs to soak your birds in water. We also here have a clean up station, and just before we actually do the butchering, because this will be overnight, we are going to one time over soap and water. One time over soap and water, and make sure everything is 100% clean. That is key. Make sure it's clean. We're working out in the open, which is nice, and it's going to be a beautiful evening. We like butchering in the evening. It's cooler, and that way we're not having the sun beating on us. We also make sure we have enough birds to do that we can be done in an hour and a half. That way it is not so stressful, butchering all day long. It's done in one evening. We can do between 10 to 20 birds without hesitation in that hour and a half. So that is one thing we like to do. We like to just get out here, be done, and get on with the rest of the day. So we pick always an evening to do. Other than that, the setup is pretty simple. One other thing, we have a bucket here. So this is where the intestines and entrails go. We drop it into this bucket. We also have another bucket, which should be right beside the table here. And this will be where the feet go into, separated, and I'll explain that as we go. We will also have another glass container where the heart, the liver, and kidneys will go in, and I'll explain that again once we get going. So that's your basic setup. The other important thing is knives. Excuse me, they've got to be sharp. So let's go over our knife choices here. This is my husband's skinning knife that he loves. So I'm gonna just make sure there's a good edge on that. These two here are skinning knives. They look a little bit different, but they are wonderful. And this one here is strictly for cutting the jugular. So we need to have sharpened knives, because there's nothing like working with a dull knife to irritate you. So basically I'm going to show you, I am not an expert in sharpening knives. The way way I got taught. My husband went through and I just started sharpening. They weren't as sharp at the beginning. I kept asking and I kept basically fine-tuning the craft. It takes practice to sharpen a knife by hand. Now, I'm not the one that does the circles. I have no idea of that technique. I simply do the strokes. I don't even know the proper names for it, but anyway, you can watch me. This is a wet stone. Oh, Orion just brought his knife here that I will sharpen up. So this is a wet stone, so I'm just gonna go over here and I'm going to get a little bit of water on it. Okay, like so. And I'm going to do a smaller knife. I'm just going to start sharpening and you can just watch me do it. Okay? Now, however many strokes you do on one side, you do on the other. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that way you're sharpening evenly on both sides. I don't know, it's about a 45-degree angle and I just go for it, okay? And sharpen. And what you have to practice on is the pressure to make sure that you're coming off evenly, and that'll create a nice sharp knife. And it is going to take you practice. I am, like I said, I'm no expert. I am teaching myself this craft. So this is something that I work on constantly, is making sure my knives are sharp. So, and the other thing is, these knives are fairly sharp. I can feel it. I always get the tips extra because when they're skinning, they use the tips of the knife quite a bit. I'm trying to count here as I talk to make sure I have the same, but I'm quite used to doing this while talking to my kids, so I just never have been filmed sharpening. So again, it's nice and sharp. I'm just going to go once over for the whole thing. And his knife is ready to go. So I just checked these knives because I did these not too long ago. This is my husband's favorite knife. Okay, say hi you guys to everyone. So these, my husband and Orion, the first thing you gotta do is catch the roosters that we put in the house. Ready to go. Let's go do it.
Okay, there are lots of different ways to dispatch your chickens. This is our preferred method because we skin our birds, we don't pluck them, and this makes them easier to skin. You'll see that as we deal with them. Some people use a chopping block with a pair of nails, and they put the head between the nails and use an axe. Some people use their children and they hold the bird. One person holds the bird and the other person takes the head off. I've seen killing cones. It's basically a funnel, and you drop the chicken down inside and just their head hangs out the bottom, so when you take their head off they can't flap around inside the cone. This is the way that we choose to do it, and both my son and I, when you take the head off, you're going to hold the wings back so that they can't flap and flip around, and they're going to take a little bit of time to bleed out. No more than 15-20 seconds, and then they're ready to go. I'll go ahead and take these guys' heads off.
Thank you.
So we do this as quickly and as humanely as possible. We don't want to stress the birds out. We don't want to harm them. But we eat meat. So just a quick cut as fast as possible. No fight. Let them bleed out. Everything once the head is taken off is just muscle reaction. Okay, so once your chicken has settled down, and we're going to skin them. Start with the legs. Basically, I need a couple inches here, depending on your comfort level with skinning, just to be able to see the flesh. So we'll go ahead and pull the leg feathers off a little ways down. Then we're going to make a cut all the way around the leg, just below the foot, this socket right here, their knee, on both legs. That you can go as deep as you want, right to the bone. You can keep it shallow. It doesn't make any difference as long as you're getting through that skin, that layer of skin. And then on the outside of the leg, just slide down it nicely till the flesh peels away from the meat, till the skin peels away from the meat. Grab a hold of a little piece of skin here and just gently peel around the leg. You can do one or both legs at a time. I'll just start with one so you can see what I'm doing. Now once you've got that, once you've got it started, you can put your finger in between the skin and the meat pretty easily, and just like a zipper, it peels all the way down to the wing here, all the way down to the shoulder. Do the other leg the same way. Your hens, your young roosters are going to peel pretty easily like this. With an older rooster, they're going to be a little tough. They can be a bit harder to peel. You might have to work a little more with the knife. Once I get all the way down both sides, then you come on the inside of the breast here, and you can just work your finger through from both sides. till you pop right through. And then I'll stick my knife in over top of my hand and just split them. From there, very little effort, you can peel them right down the wingtip, right down to the wingtips. If you have dogs like mine, they're gonna come and they're gonna pick through all of this stuff, the dogs and the cats. Nothing goes to waste here. Most of these feathers, they're gonna wash off pretty quick. Now your wings, you can see where the feathers are attached. So you wanna line your knife up along the meat, just at the base of the feathers. And that peels off nice and easily. Break the bone back. And peel off the wingtip. And then, like I say, our dogs are going to eat those. Our dogs are pretty patient. They know what's theirs and what isn't, and they'll wait. They're not going to come and bother me for snacks, though I'm sure they'd like them. And then the tail here, depending on the bird, roosters, like I say, they can be a little tougher. They might peel up the back here fairly easily. An older rooster is not going to do that, and then you'll have to work your knife underneath there. This guy's fairly young. He's this year's rooster, so he peels like a hen. Come up between the legs here and finish peeling whatever you've got left on the legs, and up between the legs, and then there's nothing left here but the Pope's nose, and you can either cut them off right there, or you can peel this and save the Pope's nose. I like to just above the anus, or just below the anus here. I just take them off, and again, the dogs are going to clean that up. And that's one bird. No long plucking. That's our preference. It means that they may cook a little drier if you put them in the oven. We put most of ours in the slow cooker, depending on how you're cooking them or how you're frying them. This works wonderfully. You just don't get the skin.
Gotta come off that.
These guys go into a quick soak just to cool them down, get a little bit of the feathers off. And from there, they're going to go over to the girls.
So Ryan, you're just finishing up here on yours?
Yeah.
Good job. So, are you guys ready?
Yes.
So let's show them how to gut a bird. Okay, Grace, bring a bird. Okay, so let's learn how to gut the bird and how we prepare the last little bit of this rooster here. So the very first thing that we need to do is take the feet off. And this is the way that I do it. Some people do it a little bit different order, but again, there's variations, but this is just the way that we do it here. So the feet come off first. Now there's a joint right here that if I make a slit here, I will open up the joint and I can actually take my knife and cut through the joint after I break it a bit. So I'm going to do this because Grace has a hard time with this, and because it takes a little bit of mookies to do this, okay? So basically, once you get used to it, you're slitting the joint right here, and when I make that cut, then I break it, and it's a really clean break. And then I take my knife and I just go in between, and then I cut it cleanly off, just like this. Okay? And then we place the feet into the bucket over here. So Grace, you want to take that foot? So chicken feet are really good in soups when you cook them down. Other cultures will roast them up. So it just depends on what your background is or what culture you're from. Lots of people do eat the feet and utilize them. They're really popular in soups also. So the other bucket, remember I said that we will keep for the intestines. That's where I put all these little cutoffs too. So Grace is going to open that up, and now just keep it open. So we have a bucket here for just all the entrails and stuff like that. It keeps everything nice and neat. So let's do another leg here. Again, I'm going to make a little slit, and then I'm going to break the bone, and then I'm going to take my knife, go into it, cut around it, and the foot is off. Throw it into my bucket, and then just clean up these little bit of feathers here. Just take my knife, and this is why I said it's really important to have nice sharp knives to do this with. Okay. Now you'll notice that I'm wearing gloves. You don't have to wear gloves to do this. I just prefer to wear gloves when I am butchering. I guess I'm a little bit squeamish when it comes to that, but that's okay. The other thing is, I also like wearing gloves because if I have to leave for a second and I don't have time to wash up my hands, if my 11-month-old needs me immediately, something like that, it's easy to take off my gloves and go help. So it's kind of a two reasons why I wear gloves. So the other thing, so we got the feet off. The next thing that you want to do is get the crop off and the windpipe. So basically you go down, you cut off the windpipe and the crop, and you just basically follow the crop here against the skin. I'm actually resting my knife against the breast here, and I am just simply cutting it off. Okay, so once that's done, now the insides. So there's a couple things that I do here. So it's really important that you don't take your knife and just cut open your bird, because you're going to hit the intestines, and you don't want to hit the intestines because that just puts a whole bunch of gross fluids and digestible material all over your bird. So what I do is I grab the skin and I pull the bit tight, and I just make my first incision a little bit slow so I can see, and see how that opens up the cavity right there. So this way you can see the intestines, you know where they are, and you're not going to hit them. Then what I do is I take my knife and I turn the blade towards my direction, and I just poke the tip of my blade and I pull up, and that opens up the cavity just like that. And on this side I do the same thing. I do initial poke and I go up, and this opens up the cavity nicely. After I'm done that, I go down towards where the anus is. Now this is my technique, is I cut on each side. So I'm going to actually just poke a bit, go up to get that initial cut, and I will go down on this side, and there's a bone here. So my blade is actually going against that bone, and I'm going down. This does not cut the intestine connected to the anus, so therefore no poo will come out. It keeps it nice and clean. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Trying to get you guys a good angle here. Okay, so I'm just going to clean that up. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is go down that bone again. There we go, just like so. Okay, so basically what happens is, because I've done this cut here, when I pull the insides out, the bum will just fall out, creating no mess. Okay, so now if you look, some liquid came out of the bum, and that there, I don't want my meat touching that. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to lift up the bird, and I'll show you how to get all the rest out without contaminating your meat, and then we'll wash this area completely clean. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just move my bird over here for a moment, hang this over. I'm going to pick up my bird and let this literally drip onto the ground, and I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to rip this little bit of tissue that's holding the rest of the entrails from the top of the breast here. Then I'm going to take my hand and I am following this breast here, so my fingers are going right up against here, and my hand will be sitting there like this inside the bird. Okay, and I'm going to be tearing at some of the tissue that is holding the heart. So I'm just working on each side, kind of tearing apart the tissue that's holding all the organs in place. And what I want to do is pull everything from the top all the way down, so you don't get the gallbladder. That's one biggest thing. You see I got the rest of the windpipe here because I'm taking it and I'm pulling it downwards. This is the liver and this is the heart. So in between the liver here on each side is a gallbladder, and if you pop that, your entire meat is contaminated, so you don't want that. If you take it and take all your entrails in one swoop, then you'll never hit the gallbladder. Okay?
It's going to.
Yeah, so there you go. That's why I do it here, because sometimes when you take the entrails, if there's poo in the intestines, it'll come out and it'll go onto the grass instead, onto my working surface. Now we're just going to switch sides to this table so it's clean. And I'm just going to pull at the intestines here. And as you can see, this here is where the anus is. And because the intestine is over here, I now can cut this right off. Just like so, okay? And this bird here is completely done and gutted through. Now with this here, I'm gonna actually just cut this right here off so I don't get any more poo on my table. And this is reality. This is where you guys want to really keep a clean workstation. And this is why I like having the granite up like this than on the table, because if I'm cutting where the anus is and anything drips, it drips onto this part of my table and not on my working surface. Now if you guys want to keep organs and stuff, I'm going to show you how to do this. So when we're done this bird, we put this bird into water, and you have a choice. You can cut off the neck or you can leave the neck on. I like to cut my necks off just because they fit better in a bag, and that's where I use a good sharp scissor, and I just put the neck with the bird in a bag. So that's totally done. We take this bird, we put it into the water to soak, so the meat doesn't dry out, and let the meat completely cool down. Now, let's look at the entrails here. So, if you like to keep the heart, you just take the heart here, and I'm going to utilize my scissor, and you can cut the heart out. Just like so. Oh, can you open up that? And we just put it in a container. And let's see here. This here is the liver. Now, this is the tricky part where you got to be very careful, you guys, because it has the gallbladder, and I'm just looking for the gallbladder here to show you. There it is. Right there is the gallbladder, and if you pop that, you will put green liquid everywhere, and it will wreck all your meat. So I'm going to purposely hit it. Take a look. This is the mess it makes. You see that? So if your hand is inside the bird and you hit this gallbladder, this is what goes all over your meat, and it just taints it. It's a very disgusting flavor, and you have contaminated your meat. Anything it touches will be completely tainted. So you never ever want to hit the gallbladder. So if you want to remove the liver, you want to be very, very careful that you do not hit that gallbladder. So you can remove the liver here. Liver is very healthy for you, and you don't want to nick the intestine here. So everything is just about really paying attention to where your knife is, what you're doing, and slow and steady. Okay? When you get good at this, you can be nice and quick about it, but you want to just make sure that you are not nicking that gallbladder. Okay? There you go. And so the liver now is removed, put into my container with the lid on, and the rest of this goes into my bucket, and if the cats want to eat it, they can. So what we're going to do now is turn on the hose, clean our workstation right up, and start another bird. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to talk through this bird. I'm just going to do it like I would normally do it to give you a chance to look at me doing it from start to finish in a faster way. a little bit about why we put them in water. One, I mentioned because we don't want the skin to dry off. We want the bird to be 100% cooled. The other reason why I soak them in water, it draws out the blood. So I will actually leave all the birds in water overnight. Now the nighttime temperature is between 1 to 5 degrees Celsius, so it's cool, it's not freezing. It's enough where your bird is not going to spoil soaking in water, but what it'll does it draws out the blood, so when you cook up your bird, the flavor is so much cleaner, it's much nicer than having a lot of blood still in the meat. And that is a kosher way to do it, is soaking meat in water, again, to draw the blood out. So I will do that. So I will bag and cut. If I want to cut it up into pieces, if I'm going to bag it, I'm going to bag it tomorrow sometime. So that's the reason why we have 3 containers full of water. And when we have about 5 birds per Rubbermaid, make sure your water level after completely covers all your meat. We are at the final step, and that is taking the soaked chicken and packaging it up. So I'm going to leave mine whole. I'm going to show you how I do. I do cut the legs off so it fits better in my package, but what I'll do is I will take one of the chickens and I will cut it up in pieces to just show you if you wanted to do wings, if you wanted to do thighs, if you wanted to do breasts, just so you have an idea. And then I'm just going to put that all in a bag, and that's okay. So what I do first is, before my hands get all wet, I take out enough bags. Now we had 17 birds, so 1, 2, get enough bags out. We have our sharp knife, and now it is simply, let's go take a look at the birds. So here are containers. They were put in the shade overnight, right? And here they are soaking. Now take a look. You see the water here? You see how much blood came out? And this is what I really like, is these birds have very little blood left in them. Okay, so let's take a bird out. If you see any feathers on, this is the time where I get a little more picky and I take the feathers off. So let's grab a bird. And I do one at a time. Things are a bit stiff, but they're nice and cool. They look good. This one here doesn't have many feathers, and I just took that one off. It doesn't look like I have much to do here, so that's really good. It looks really nice and clean. That's the whole point of soaking. So these don't fit in my bag very, very well, and I like using just a large Ziploc. So what I do is actually press down on it, and I only do this so it fits in the bag. If you cut bags big enough, no problem. So I take my knife, I go on each side, and what happens is that there's this joint, and I'm cutting around this joint in the between. See that? And I'm going to do the same thing to this side. So let's do that. So I take my knife, I go down this way, then I go down this way, I kind of push on the opposite way, and then I'm going in between that joint, so I'm not cutting bone. And there is 2 legs off. I take my body of the bird, I put it in my bag, just like so. Okay, and then I put one leg there and one leg there, and that way it nicely fits into my bag. And all done. Okay, one done. So let's now take all the pieces off. Let's say you wanted all the pieces off it. So let's use this one as an example. And a lot of times I take it and I flip it over so any water inside the body comes out. And this is why I like doing it outside. Keeps things clean. So here I want to remove any little bit of feathers that's still on the bird. Okay, I want it as clean as possible. Okay, so that looks not too bad. here. Okay, so let's say I'm going to take the legs off, the wings off, and the breast off, and I'm just going to be left with the carcass. How do I do that? Because sometimes I have 3 different bags right here. One for the breasts, one for the legs, and one for the wings. And I just start putting, you know, the breasts in one bag and the legs, and I really do that with duck. The ducks, I all dismember into various pieces because I like cooked duck that way. The chicken I like to keep whole, the turkeys I like to keep whole, and the geese I like to keep whole, and the ducks I completely take all the pieces. Anyway, so how do you do this? This is the same thing for turkeys, ducks, chickens, birds, okay? That way. I actually start with just by breaking that joint that I just did, but I actually will leave these on for the moment. There's a little feather there, because it gives us balance, okay? So if I would cut these off, I find it harder to cut off the breast because they're not, the carcass isn't as balanced. So that's the reason for this. So that's why I start here. There is a bone here, and the bone kind of, I take my knife and I go right against that bone. Okay, and you can kind of feel it. Then I angle it because that's what it is. You see that? Right there? Okay, and I just follow down, okay? And I just follow down this whole breast cavity here. And this is why you need a really nice sharp knife to make a nice clean cut. You see that? So that way, this whole breast comes off in one piece. Okay. So just like that. So that is a wonderful bird breast or chicken breast there. Okay. So I'm going to put that off to the side. Let's do that again. So this is your top bone here on your carcass. I'm taking a nice cut and I'm cutting right against that bone. Nice and deep, okay, and I'm just gonna work it so I get all the meat off as much as I can. And it really pays to buy knives at a proper butchering shop because they sharpen really well. And you'll hear the kids in the background, they're kind of playing right now. And I just want to say thank you, Nova, for filming. Okay, so there's another breast. So take a look at that. This little bit, I'm not that concerned. This will go in my stock pot and will fall off in my stock pot. So that's just fine. The next thing I want to do now is these thighs. So again, just like I had just showed you here, there's one. Press down a little bit here. Get that. Can't really get it, so I'm going to just cut back and forth here for a second. Bam, the joint pops in between. Okay, so I'm going to take a look. Here are the thighs. So sometimes you have this meat and then this one here. So there is a joint here that you can cut. So I'm going to cut it around. Something like that, which releases this joint. And then I break it, and hopefully I can break this one nicely. This just takes practice. There you go. See, the joint is right there. Okay, and I want to always cut in between the joints so I'm not cutting bone. And there's some more pieces right there. All right, let's try that again. Let's try that again here. So I'm cutting about the middle. I'm cutting all the way around. And then I break it, which opens up that joint. And now I'm cutting in the middle, around again, break it a bit. And I'm getting held up right here. Just kind of, there you go, work it. There's those pieces. And now comes the wings. And the wings again, I'm looking for that joint right here. And so I'm just going to cut around it, and this one here should come right off. take a look here. I'm getting held up by here, so I'm going to cut that off here. And there's my open spot. And there you go. There's the wing off there. Again, we're going to do this one, and sometimes breaking it, you know, break the joint a little bit so you kind of can see where it is, works. So I'm just going to get underneath here, go right in between that joint, done, off, and now I'm left with my carcass. So you can separate these in pieces as you're butchering if you want, something like that in different bags. Then what I like to do is take this carcass, I bag this up, and I make soup out of this. So I use all the meat, and every last little bit gets used of this bird. So that is it in a nutshell. So if you have any questions, comment below and ask. Otherwise, you can do this for like I said, ducks, chickens, geese, those kind of birds, no problem. It's just on a bigger scale. Obviously the carcasses are bigger. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was informative, comprehensive, and gives you the tools needed to enjoy your meat, know where your meat is raised, and butcher it humanely. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next video.